Hey everybody, it's Bob Chic, and I'm back on RxMuscle.
I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution. And we're back for another installment of the Palumbo podcast. I'm Dave Palumbo. John Romano has got an emergency. His wife is stuck on the side of the road, but I have a very special guest here, and we're going to be doing a really enlightening interview. He's back by popular demand, the voice of bodybuilding, Bob Cicherillo. What's up, Bob?
Big Dave, what's up? A lot of news going on this week.
I see you've eclipsed everyone, and you've actually, I think you're more popular than Nick Walker today on this. Maybe even Sam Sulek.
That's very possible. I could be indeed in 7th place. So,
I'm trying to decide where I want to start.
Actually, I'm going to start. I'm going to break your traditional play-by-play, but I've got to ask, just because I got to ask. So I noticed on your thumbnail of the last show, it's got a picture of me, and it says in big letters, "Fired," with a big exclamation point. So what I want to know from you, I was going to ask John, of course, but unfortunately he couldn't join us. What have I been fired from exactly? And I know.
But Bob, I've been doing a lot of research into YouTube. And I've been trying to figure out that why the best content doesn't get the most views. Because I feel like I've been doing a lot of content for like the last 15 years, media content. Yeah. And I think we do a pretty good job. I mean, and I'm wondering why like the guys like who quite frankly report from their basement, we know those guys, get more views sometimes than I do. And so I'm thinking, I think my headlines are not sensationalistic because I know I fall victim to clicking on a lot of these videos and because of the title or the headline. So I figured you got to jazz it up a little, otherwise people won't actually click on the thing. So I've taken a page out of some of these other younger.
Okay, all right, fair enough. Listen, I just thought maybe you knew something I didn't, but
No, I think that's why it's great that we have you here today because I want to get the full story of what happened. But before we get to that, I really want to talk about. I'm been really vehement about on social media lately about people trying to restrict people's free speech, and like I said, I hate that because you know what? If one person's restricted in free speech, then we all can eventually be restricted, and that's what's terrible about restriction of that. And that's what when Elon Musk bought Twitter, that probably saved social media, and it's because they were censoring everyone. All right, I mean they were knocking out people's accounts. But Donald Trump lost his account for God's sake.
Yeah.
So free speech in this country is not meant for easy speech. It's the hard speech that we don't want to hear, right? I mean, that's the speech.
Or stuff you don't agree with, right? And I want to say thank you to you and John for basically backing up, my right as well as everybody else's right to an opinion. And whether it's over the line or not, or if it's wordage that somebody might use or not, or whatever. You can't really put a whole lot of restrictions, or like you said, it restricts everybody, and then you've got nothing.
The problem is that a lot of these, these guys out there that have very big social media followings, like C-Bum or Sam Sulek or Nick Walker, if you criticize them, their fans go nuts on you, and they want to shut you down and cancel you because, God forbid, you say something bad. Well, look at the Swifties, what they do for Taylor Swift. Same thing. I mean, they can literally shut your social media off if they're mad. And that's not cool as far as I'm concerned. You know, you made a comment.
We live in a different day, Dave. Again, you and I were brought into this business about the same time. We've both been around for many, many years, and the dynamic in the landscape has changed so much. Just in the last 10 years. Yeah. Oh, sorry, getting calls in there. There's Nick Walker. I'll call him back later. So it's gotten ridiculous where if you have an opinion that doesn't seem to match somebody else, it's not even enough that now they have to destroy you. They have to destroy you. You have to be removed. Bob needs to be fired, taken out. He's got no business, and and it's like, really? It's like, these people clearly were not around, Dave, back in the day when we had the magazines.
Right.
B, when you and just a few of us had platforms like this type of a thing. Us with PBW, me and Dan, yourself, you were one of the first out there. The press conferences. I mean, I had been doing nothing different for 20 to 25 years. So it's not anything that I've changed. It's clearly that the society as a whole has changed.
Yeah, well, they like I said, no one likes, they want to get the new guys in there, and they want to get their little buddies in there. But the bottom line is that when you watch sports on TV, you want to see the announcer that's been doing it for 30 years, because those guys have insights. They have knowledge of the industry that's tremendous. I'll give Lonnie Tieper credit. I mean, if you look at Lonnie Tieper, you wouldn't think he would be like as popular of an MC as he was over the years, but he had a personality. So he injected into the shows, and you might not like him, or you might think he's not a good MC, but the guy entertained. He had nicknames for everyone, and so during his reign, he was really great. And then you kind of took over that role, and you have your own shtick and your own comedic tone. People like it, and some people will hate you, but the guys who hate you will watch you more than the guys that like you, and that's
well, that's the funny thing. Throughout this whole week, my subscriptions went up. My Instagram numbers went up dramatically. And I get half the people on my own channel allegedly hate my guts, but they all watch. So again, Dave, you're no stranger to this. Again, we've both been doing this for a long time, but it gets a little aggravating when you can't even throw out anything that's remotely entertaining or controversial, or again, people can always have their opinions, but even though everybody's entitled to opinion, everybody doesn't have the same opinion. Okay. So there's qualified opinions. There's people that are in the know and have opinions. And then there's just people in their basement that have opinions.
Right.
I'm not a fan. Okay. You're not a fan. We're fans generally of the sport and such, but I don't have anybody in particular. Fan, as most people have no idea, is short for the word fanatic. Okay?
That's true.
That's where the word origin is from. I'll guarantee you, most people have I don't know that's what fan meant. Yes, fanatic. That means you are overly eager and supportive of somebody for whatever reason that it is. You like the freaks, you like the old school, you like whatever. So God forbid I should come out and say something against that particular person or whatever. And the funny thing is the least offended person seems to be Nick Walker.
Yeah. Well, he gets it. That's why he's all about social media. It's interesting. Back in, I think it was probably about 15 years ago, I was critiquing a show that was I think it was in Atlantic City, and Will Harris was in the show.
World Harris.
World War Harris, and we love him, but he was really not in good shape. And I said, I harshly critiqued his physique. I said the guy is just out of shape, and he got so offended, after prejudging about what I said, that he didn't talk to me for a bunch of years. But the funny thing was he came in like 15th place, so it wasn't like it wasn't like I didn't give an opinion that was actually accurate. And he apologized and we made up after that. But a lot of people take offense when you criticize their physique, especially when it comes from someone like you or me, because they know that we know what we're talking about, and no one wants to be told that they don't look good, right?
Well, listen, to your point, and this works out perfectly. I know we'll hopscotch all over the place because there's a variety of things to cover this week, but some of it's just in the wordage you use. Okay, so I took some liberty, with that, and I said on Jay's Cutler cast, that everybody knows, Jay asked me a direct question. I didn't just bring up Nick Walker out of the blue, and he said, "Do you think he can win the Olympia?" And I said, "No." And then we went on to qualify it with pretty much why, and I said, "Well, he's kind of got an H shape. And again, it's kind of a tongue in cheek. I mean, listen, So H shape. Okay, so people take offense to that. Well, it's not a V taper and it's not an X frame like a Tony Freeman, but
Right.
I mean, now could I have used another word? Yeah, I could have used blocky. I could have used he's square. He's shaped like he's Nick the Brick. He's a fridge like Jay Cutler, right?
Yeah.
I couldn't use any of it. Does one thing negate what I said and make it not true? You said actually on the cast the other day, which I thought was kind of funny because I don't think anybody else caught this, but I did, of course.
Right.
You actually said, look, it's not that I don't think that the words of this effect. It's not that I don't think Nick could win. If everybody's off, he could win. And I thought to myself, well, is that better? like you just said, if everybody's off, he can win. I mean, in effect, you're saying that, he's not that good unless everybody fucks up, right?
Well, but that, in other words, you have to still be good to be able to win, even when other people are off. In other words,
but you caught no flack for that.
He's in the conversation. But we know in the history of bodybuilding, the best guys didn't always win the Olympia. I mean, Flex Wheeler and Levrone should have been Olympia's champs by virtue of how great their physiques was. But they didn't have the mindset to be able to bring that conditioning and bring that look on the day of the show. And that's why guys like Dorian and Ronnie, decimated that era, because they were so consistent.
Well, in effect, though, it's all semantics and wordage. We both said the same exact thing with different phrases. Right. I caught royal hell, and nobody even caught it on you. That you caught no flack for it.
Well, because I always call it the Branch Warren phenomenon. Everyone thought Branch Warren couldn't win the Olympia or couldn't win an Arnold, and then but he's the guy who showed up, in the best shape of his life all the time, and he was at his all-time best. And when guys like Cutler, didn't look their best, or guys, were off a little bit, he just, capitalized on it. I mean, he almost won the Olympia the year that he was second.
Yes.
I mean.
That's true.
I don't think anyone expected that in the hit. If no one would have predicted that in a million years, right?
No, listen, and Jay and Branch helped each other.
Yeah.
I've been on record many times as saying when the worst thing that ever happened to Branch Warren was Jay retired, and now he had nobody to stand next to him that looked even remote. He was the odd man out. Bodybuilding, as we both know, is all about and only as good as who you're standing next to. And this is why I kind of took I did take a little offense, and I think I should have when, so me and Nick start going back, and of course Nick had some comments, and his comments were, well, who the F is Bob, number one, which, it's like, all right, fine, that's cool, right?
Bob, that's a play to his social media audience, right? Because he knew they'd pick up on that and then go after you on that.
And I didn't even take offense to that. Like, listen, I could roll. Listen, we're Italians and New Yorkers. So, I mean, this is dinner on Thursday night. This isn't anything special.
Right.
What I actually took offense to was the notion that when he said, well, what did he win? The USA? And it's like, well, first of all, what does my career and your career that are 20 years apart have anything to do with it? That doesn't make your case or speak anything to you. Okay, number one. Number two. And that's when I fired back and says, well, I'll tell you who the F I am, and kind of making again, tongue-in-cheek remark about the 8th place thing, although we can get into that in a bit. Yeah. But then I says, look, you wouldn't even have turned pro back in my day. Now, Dave, as somebody who stood next to me at a lot of those competitions, and I would still submit to this, because, listen, we can have fun with this all day long. Me and Nick have kind of made peace, privately on the thing. He gets it. Yeah. He gets it. It's all in good fun and all that stuff. But I will stick by this. Could Nick have turned pro back in the day? Back in those early 90s, mid 90s? And the answer is he would have had a very difficult time because you had to win the overall back then. So now you go down the list and you go, well, wait a minute here. Who was he beating back then? Was he beating Flex Wheeler? Was he beating Chris Cormier? Was he beating Ronnie Coleman? Was he beating? And now you go, oh, wait a minute now. I think Bob's got a point, right? Yeah. And, he even says like the two show, like he says the other day he had a Q&A, which I thought was kind of interesting, right? And he was taking questions from all the people out there. And of course, half of them had to do with me, of course. And he was having some fun with it, and that's cool. I didn't have any issue. Somebody asked him, he says, Nick, if you can compete in any Olympia, any year, what year would it be? And he fired back, I'd like to compete in the Olympia that Bob competed in. Now, I know why he said that, right? Which, okay, so you want to go heads up with me, type of thing. But I says, you know what? Let me take the opportunity here to take a look at the Olympia I was in, which was 2002. Okay. Yeah. Now, okay, Nick, I'm going to give you your wish. We're going to do maybe Dave, you can have your graphics guys on this one, but here's the 2002 Olympia. Ronnie Coleman Kevin Levrone, Chris Cormier, Dexter
Jay took
Jackson.
that year off. Yeah, Jay took that year off. Yeah.
Yeah. Gunther Schlerkamp, guy named Lee Priest. We all remember him.
Yeah.
A guy named Flex Wheeler. We all remember him. And guess who was in, of all people? Guess who was in that iconic 8th place finish, Dave?
You.
No, I was way down the list. But
Who
Marcus
was?
Rule.
Oh, Marcus Rule. Right.
Marcus Rule was 8th. Now I bring it up because obviously I made the 8th place thing, but so I'll submit. And then it was Orville, DJ, Titus, Art Atwood. So I submit to Nick, it's like, be careful what you wish for, buddy, because I don't know where you end up in this lineup. I guess we can let the fans decide.
That
but
was Marcus from that Olympia.
Yeah, that right there is 8th place at the 2002 Olympia.
Yeah.
And then I'll give you one more. The only other year I could have been in the Olympia but opted not to was 2006 when I qualified by winning the Masters Worlds, but I opted to keep the microphone in my hand smartly. Here was your lineup there. Jay, Ronnie, Victor, Dexter, Melvin, Gustavo, Tony Freeman, Marcus Rule, once again in 8th place, DJ, Gunther, Vince Taylor, Branch Warren, Johnny Jackson, Durham Charles, and Troy Ells. So I bring this up to say, look, I know it's never fair to compare eras. We've all been down that road. Who's better, Arnold or Ronnie? That type of thing. It's not fair, really. But I just thought it was kind of an interesting hypothetical as to, one, would he have turned pro back in the day? And two, again, his wish land of Olympias to compete in. I don't know if you wanted to be in that lineup there, buddy.
Yeah. Well, my response to what you just said was, number one, I think he would have turned pro, but it would have taken him a lot longer because the way he looked when he turned pro and the way he looked when he became a pro was a lot different. So he probably would have had to progress a lot beyond what he was as an amateur to actually turn pro in that era. That's number one. Number two, I think the fact that he's comparing himself to you is actually so stupid because you're not saying I'm better than Nick Walker. You're just giving your critique of Nick Walker. So it doesn't really matter. I think you achieved enough accolades in the sport to have the honor of critiquing people, right? I mean, you won the USA, which was very difficult to do back in the day, and you competed as a pro a couple times. What you're not saying I'm better than you. You're saying that here's my opinion of you, and I think that's where the problem is. And I don't know why people think that you're not allowed to give your opinion of people, given the fact that first of all, guys in their basement give their opinion, but you have actually knowledge and insight, and you've been around a long time. So yeah, I have to support every opinion you have because I don't have to agree with it, but I got to support it. So it's silly to try to say I'm a better bodybuilder than you, Bob. That's not a good argument.
The caveat there is because of two factors. One, that I was the quote athlete's rep, and two, that I'm the MC for the Olympia, which somehow precludes me from doing my job of announcing people when I have an opinion, Dave, which is kind of funny because, again, being somebody that's been around the game as long as you have, you remember the day. Again, I have done this for 20 years on PBW, on The Last Rep, on play-by-play with Dan Solomon, doing the Arnold for many, many years on every show, and the magazines, Flex Magazine, Muscular Development, every magazine you can think of. I wrote articles for. We did predictions. We would all do pre-game predictions of things. And last but not least, the press conference, which was literally the day before the show, where I routinely would put guys on the spot, call them out for various things, try to get a little bit of hype going and stuff like that. And nobody ever questioned whether I should be emceeing the show or not. It's amazing.
Well, I don't see what emceeing the show and being a critique of this show. There's no conflict of interest there. I don't understand it. It's not like you're Walter Cronkite on the evening news where you have to be like unbiased. You're just announcing guys' names on stage. That's part of your job. You get paid to do that. And so why can't you also critique the show or predict the show ahead of time? It just doesn't – the arguments are just flawed. And that's why I went right to your defense because, like I said, I defend the right to freedom of speech. And I mean, you have an opinion, and that's fine. And it has nothing to do whether you're a better bodybuilder than Nick or not Look, if you think Nick's going to be 8th place, that's your opinion. It doesn't have to be – something that people agree or disagree with. And you know what? And you probably are getting more popular because people are pissed off that you're putting him in 8th place. So they're like, man, we want to see what this guy says next now because, There was a guy,
all,
I can't remember the sportscaster's name. I was a big Jets fan back in the day. Unfortunately, they're a heartbreaker, but they had won the first 7 games. This was back in the 90s, and the guy kept saying they're losers, they suck, and everyone would go after this. And this guy, they wanted to kill him in New York, and sure enough, they hit like the 8th or 9th game that after they had a winning streak, and then they lost like 8 in a row or something like that. And he was right, but no one wanted to admit it because they were somehow winning, and in New York, we love winners. So
I think what captures most people again was when I said, "Oh, who the F am I? I'm the guy that's going to be announcing you in 8th." Now, God forbid I should have now. Did I really mean 8th place? Well, listen, let's take a look. First of all, he hasn't been on the Olympia stage for 2 years, and it'll be almost 3 years by the time if he gets back to the Olympia. And I say that not being disparaging, but he's got to qualify like everybody else does. It's not a guarantee. We get into that with the upcoming Pittsburgh and New York.
Yeah.
But let's take a look at some names here and see if it's actually that crazy that he could be in that space. In no particular order: Hottie Sampson, Derek Martin. That's 4.
Yeah.
Andrew, Brandon, Hunter, who's beaten Nick. And I'm going to put Behruz Tabani in there from Iran because there's a good possibility. I have some very good inside info that he will be in the States this year.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and I hope, God willing, that goes through because this poor kid's been, training for 3 years, getting ready for Olympia. He wasn't able to get her because of politics. Terrible. And Behruz Tabani, that's 8 people right there. So is it crazy to think that any of those guys who either have beaten Nick or could certainly give him a run, could place ahead of him? It's like, well, look, there's a game to be played. We all know that. The hype of, I guess if it's going to be a moral victory, if he ends up taking 6th or 7th, I mean, have at it. But listen, he's got his hands full. And again, this isn't against Nick personally. I don't even barely know the kid. He's got his hands cut out for him because he's a freak and he's got a freaky body, and that's great. But it's very difficult when you get next to the list of names that I just put out there that, yes, he's got his hands full. And at first, he's got to get through Pittsburgh, and that's not going to be easy. As I hear, you got Martin Fitzwater going in there, who, in my opinion, should have beaten Nick in New York last year. And I'm hearing on the inside that Derek Lunsford has thrown his hat in the ring.
That's I was going to say that Derek's there, and look, you got guys like Good Vito who are surging, and it's not a foregone conclusion.
No,
that Nick could win the show. It's a very difficult show. They're giving away a lot of money. I mean, it's over $100,000 first place. It's a first-year show. It's in Pittsburgh. Obviously, that's a very, people are going there because they want to, see Jim Mannion, and they want Jim Mannion to see him, and they want to support the show. So it's going to be like a little mini Arnold, really, is what it's going to be.
Well, it's going to be a great show. I mean, good for Jim, good for Tyler. I know they're putting a lot of money and a lot of effort into this. And listen, we need another good headliner show out there. And nobody better than the Prez himself at 81 years young that, he's taking that next step. I've always thought Pittsburgh should have a men's open, so it's about time. And
I always wondered why he didn't have one. And I think it's just a lot of logistics, but Tyler's got that, that youth, and he's like, let's do it. We're going to do an expo with it. So it's great because you know what? You got the New York and you got the Pittsburgh back to back. It almost gives you like a mid-season now, like big event that to look forward to. Number one, to go to, and number two, for the bodybuilders to actually cash in on, because sometimes it's hard to compete in the beginning of the year and then at the end of the year. So now you got something in between.
Yeah, listen, and again, Nick, I hope he's in 100% because I know Martin's probably going to be right there, and he's put on some weight. Hopefully it's good weight. But like you say, speaking of good Vito's in there, and he's no slouch. That kid's got a lot of muscle. And let's face it, he's not the most aesthetically pleasing either, but he's actually put together a little bit better in overall context of shape, symmetry, and proportion. So none of this is guaranteed, but it's going to be interesting to see. You got Pittsburgh, and then you got New York a week later. I would assume that anybody putting the effort into Pittsburgh would certainly be in New York, and why would you miss an opportunity?
Right.
But that's where it gets interesting, though, Dave. Hypothetically, if Nick doesn't win either of those shows, what does he do then? Like, he can't really afford to miss another Olympia. Like, he's already 0-2 in the last 2 years, right? So that's a disaster. He also can't afford to come in off his best. But at that point, you got to qualify. So now what do you do? Do you go overseas? Do you go to FIBO? Do you go to what do you call it? Dubai. Listen, guess who's going to be waiting for you in Dubai? Beirut. And again, I don't think under any good day. I mean, Beirut is a lot of people aren't familiar with him. Go look him up, everybody. This guy is an instant top 5 threat to the Olympia. No questions about it. Guaranteed. All he's got to do is get here. But anyway, it puts Nick in a strange position of, okay, well, how much gas you got in the tank, number 1? And 2, do you drain the gas tank just trying to get to the Olympia to only put your worst product on stage? Because let's face it, it's hard doing 3, 4, 5 shows and then trying to show up at the big dance in October. So he better, to his sake, I hope he wins Pittsburgh, because if he doesn't, it's going to be a real interesting road.
I might have hedged my bets if I were him and done Detroit, Fuad show at the end of this month. He should have had that on his sights, because he could have knocked that one out, got the qualification, then done Pittsburgh anyway, just, for the hype and the money. And then at least there's no pressure on him to win that show. But, I guess he's putting all his cards into the middle of the table, and he's all the chips in, and he's going to say, hey, I'm going there to win. And it's a great attitude. But like you said, there is a actual strategy to getting to the Olympia at this point, because there's not that many ways to get there. And you got to win shows nowadays. It's not like you can place top 3. So you really have to, and how many shows are you going to really do? The bigger guys tend to, their bodies don't really handle, doing multiple show after show after show after show, because it wears you down. Then you get to the Olympia and you're not your best,
He's got some pressure on him. Let's face it. It's undue pressure, but it is pressure. Again, not being in the last 2 Olympias. Again, the first year he got injured. That's legit. The second year, obviously, last year, he just decided to not go in for whatever his reasons are, whether they were physical, mental, or a combination of both. But the bottom line is you're going to be the boy who cried wolf. And you saw his own fan base turn on him, this last year when he didn't. Now, I see his own people kind of, a lot of them kind of turn the other way. But just to show that I'm not at all a bad guy, and I don't have anything personal against Nick. Number 1, I did reach out to Nick privately, and we're good. He's like, I get it. He put out the shirt. I actually asked him if he had that in a 2X, because I wanted one.
I saw that. Yeah, that was good. Yeah, that was
maybe we'll put some kind of a cheesy bet or something on the shows. Whatever. Right? Let's have some fun. He gets it though, right? So we're good. But for all those who think I'm just a Nick hater, and I love that word these days, right? Yeah. I'm going to take you back to 2 years ago when Nick Walker, you remember, Dave, won the Arnold Classic, right? Yep. Should be a good segue into our Arnold stuff. But he won the show. He came out, crowned the winner. Here comes Arnold. Arnold gave him the trophy and walked off the stage. No interview, no nothing. Now, this was Nick's big moment, right? Like anybody's. Right. Like Ali Bilal thought he had a big moment, and it kind of got turned around on him. But there is no script for things like this for people. We'll get into the script stuff with the Arnold in a minute. I'm on my own at that point. So Arnold just walked away and did an interview, which I thought was not cool, right? I mean, this is the Arnold. It is Arnold, right? That's what any athlete would dream of, is standing in the middle of that stage with the one and only Arnold Schwarzenegger, asking you those same 3 questions, Dave. How did you train? What did you do? Okay, great. Yeah, but that's your moment, right? And he just walked away and left him standing there. And I'm like, all right. So I took it upon myself to go out there and interview him, because I thought it was warranted. I thought he deserved that respect. And I didn't like the fact he just kind of left him standing there. And, I gave him a proper interview and gave him his moment to, relish in the victory, thank whoever he wanted to thank, and move on. And secondly, we were at the Olympia 2 years ago now. Nick's in the front row. He's literally right in front of me in the wheelchair, if you remember, when he was kind of kicking around. And I took a moment to recognize him, which I didn't have to do. Again, this is not in the script, folks, okay? This is just, I'm on my own to do what I want to do for the most part. I wanted to recognize him. I gave him some accolades, and I told him that this Olympia stage would be much better with you on it. And I meant that sincerely. That wasn't but again, that's a real moment. And I know he appreciated that, and the fans did. So it's nothing personal, folks. Again, this is what people like me and Dave and other people in this industry do, is we make critique and we make predictions and we throw shit out there. And God forbid, like John Romano, I'll speak for John since he couldn't make it today. God forbid we should have any fun in this industry or razz it up or have any type of interest.
Yeah, well, no one has a sense of humor these days. It's getting better now. I think that Trump was elected, but seriously, for a while, no one had a sense of humor. You couldn't say anything about anyone. Everyone was offended, and they were going to sue you over it and cancel you.
Right.
And, you know, it's getting like, it's even comedians. I have a couple friends who are comedians, and they stopped going to college campuses. And, you know, for comedians, you know, that's a huge moneymaker, you know, the college tour. Sure. But they said no one can laugh at themselves anymore, especially at the universities, because they're like, everything's so politically correct and the wokeism and everything like that. So, you know, I think we're getting past that now. But for people who are watching this, you have to understand that's what Bob and I do. People, and there's a lot of other guys, and we're not the only ones who do, but that's what we do. We critique people. It has nothing to do about personality. What you just did, the breakdown of the Olympia, going through the top 8 guys and explaining why Nick might have a problem and why Nick might have a problem qualifying, is absolutely accurate. It's astute. It's warranted. And it doesn't have anything to do with how you feel personally about Nick Walker. It's just you analyzing who's there and what is the potential of to happen. So why people would say, oh, he's hating on Nick Walker. No, it's not. That's real scenarios that you're setting up and that we're evaluating. And they're valid, 100% valid.
And listen, I love the underdog. I was an underdog. I mean, listen, I took 13 years to get a damn pro card. So I understand being the underdog. I understand being the guy that says, he'll never get a pro card. Yeah, he sucks. He can't do it. He can't get in shape. It ain't going to happen. Blah, blah, blah. Mendenhall, Liedelmeyer, Edgar Fletcher, Bob Chic, Bob, you know, that's what I had for years, Dave, before I finally broke through and you know, got mine. But you know, so listen, I would love if Nick wins Pittsburgh or New York.
Yeah, it was a great comeback story. Yeah.
It's great for the business. It's good for the industry. It's good for Nick, right? I would love to see that happen. Okay. By the same token, I'm a realist, and people like you and I that have been in this game and do have an eye, because like I said earlier, not everybody that's got an eye is qualified. There's other podcasters that routinely have put stuff out that is so far off the base. And, you know, I'm not going to play that semantics game. I'm just going to call them out. Like Muscle Discord Matt, okay? This is where I got into it with him last year, right? Over that whole Phil Clayhar thing, right? And that whole thing was because he couldn't give a qualified answer as to why he had Phil Clayhar in the top 5 when he ended up in dead last. Now, again, it was nothing against. Listen, I didn't judge. Okay, that's the way it came out. Ironically, it was Steve Weinberger who judged, and he came on Matt's show and he was whining and complaining about his placing, and he thought it was he actually wasn't alluding to it. He said it was a conspiracy. He said that Tyler Mannion had it out for him, and they wanted him off the stage, and all these bizarre things. And then he asked the fateful question, Dave, which of course I took the bait. Yeah, I just wish anybody could explain it to me. I just wish somebody could explain.
You love when you hear that.
Yo, hey, right here, who better but the athlete's rep, all right, to actually give you some clarity on the situation. And the reason I did that was simple. It was no conspiracy. Do you think the judges got together the night before the show and said, hey, what do you want to do with Phil Clayhar?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, right? But I get back to I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but Matt, Mr., you know, he's got his podcast and this and that, but he's not an expert. He doesn't know what he's looking at. He doesn't have an eye for bodybuilding. Why do I say this? Because he kept insisting that he had Phil in the top 5 when he ended up in last. Now, Dave, you and I have been in a lot of instances of making predictions. Now, I'm going to take your Lavroni prediction out. Okay, let's just.
Well, that was just for hype and fans.
Yeah, let's just move on. Let's move past that. Okay, but in all generalities, we've never picked that last that we thought should have been in the top 3 or 5. Right? It doesn't happen. Okay, because we have eyes for bodybuilding, right? And I kept asking Matt. This is why I don't talk to him anymore. I can't deal with him because. He's not at my level or anybody's level for that matter to have a valid discussion. You and I can debate all day long on the merits, right? But when I kept asking him, and his only answer was, well, that's just my opinion. And I said, but you have to qualify an opinion. Why do you believe he should have been in the top 5? Well, it's my opinion. Well, it's just my opinion. And it actually went on long enough to be almost a joke. And then the only thing he says was, well, based on what he did last year, I thought it warranted a call on it. Last year, am I missing something here, Dave? I didn't know. When did we change the rules? Yeah. You know, maybe I should have done this as the athlete's rep, right? Well, when did we change the rules that you get to submit a resume of what you did last year or the year before or the obstacles you had to overcome and all that? What round is that, Dave? I'm missing that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's like arguing with a girlfriend, who you're asking. As men, we're very logical, right? And as women, they're very emotional. And a lot of times you'll say, well, why do you feel this way? And they're like, I just feel this way. But you have to explain to me. Otherwise, we as men can't understand what we've done wrong, right? Because we need to have an explanation. You can't just say it's because I think that's what you have to at least explain. Well, he had better conditioning, his fullness was better, his shape was better. You got to give a qualification of if you're going to give an opinion. If you're not going to do that, then you're not really an analyst. You're not really a critique person. You're just a
bingo.
fan.
You just said the magic words. This is why I can't take him seriously, and I can't respond to him anymore. He keeps like, stop contacting me. I'm not coming back on your show. Yeah. I don't even want to engage with you because you're so far down the totem pole. There's people we can disagree. You and I disagreed on 100 things over the years, but at the end of the day, there was always the modicum of respect. Yeah. And to this day, listen, we can be on a podcast together and hash stuff out or have some fun or whatever. But again, I respect you for the years you've been in the business, or John Romano or many other. I go on other podcasts. Again, I have respect for those people, but you have to be able to quantify an opinion, and if you want to be taken as an expert.
Right. I mean, look, when we talk about relatives, and people argue, Italians arguing at Christmas dinner or Thanksgiving dinner, that's what it really is. I mean, but everyone has an opinion, and they back up their opinion with facts, and you might not agree with those facts. I might say the guy was shredded. You might say, nah, I didn't really like his conditioning, but at least we're arguing about the same things. You can't just say I love this guy, or he was great last year, or that's not going to cut it. Is Nick Walker a great guy? Is he good for the sport? Yeah, but that doesn't warrant him winning a show just because we like the guy. And so you have to be able to critique that. Now, I want to move on to this Arnold Classic.
Yeah, sure. Plenty to talk about there.
Yeah, a lot. You've been the MC the last. How many years have you done the MCing job now?
I want to say 4 years. I could be wrong on that. I'm sure somebody will correct me if it's not. But
well, at least 3 years in a row you've been the MC, and I thought you've done a really good job.
I've done the Arnold seminar with Arnold for I think 10 or 12 years, and then 3-4 years ago, whatever it was, I got brought into. And just to squash any potentials out there, because there's a lot of stuff we can cover with this. When I was asked to do the Arnold, I went to Dan Solomon and Jake Wood from the Olympia, and I actually asked them permission, so to say. I asked for their blessing in doing it. Now, did I have to do this? No, I wasn't exclusive to the Olympia in those terms. I've hosted shows all over the world. Okay, so and again worked with Arnold for 11, 12 years. Yeah. So I thought it was the respectful thing to do, because I am known in certain circles as whatever you want, the voice of bodybuilding, voice of the Olympia. Obviously, I've done the Olympia for 20 years now, so I'm very integrated in with that. Yeah. Without hesitation, both of them said, "Look, it's what you do for a living.
Yeah, it's money.
Yeah, and it's we don't want to take money out of your pocket, and we don't have any issue with it." Great. So I got the blessing. So I just want to put that out there, because everybody seems to think there's this big contentious thing between the Arnold and the Olympia, and there is. It's only on the Arnold side.
I think there's a competition aspect to it, and I don't know who initiated it, but there's definitely some competition there.
Well, there is.
But that doesn't have anything to do
to your point.
But it's money, though. That shouldn't.
There is a competition element to it, but it's not from the Olympia side, because when you compare them straight up, it's not even comparable. This is not Coke and Pepsi. This is not Burger King and McDonald's. Everybody, the Arnold is a qualifier, even though it's the biggest one. It's a qualifier for the Olympia.
But I'll tell you where the competition is. It's not the show is not the competition.
No,
the prize money is the competition.
But bro, even that I'm going to push back on you. Okay, let's examine that.
Yeah,
the prize money was $2.1 million at the Olympia.
Right.
Nobody's even approached $1 million at any other show.
Remember, the Arnold is an imitation, so that you can't compare apples to apples here, because they don't have.
And this is what I'm saying. It's not Coke and Pepsi. For those, again, the competition of prize money doesn't even exist. Arnold just this last year raised it to $500,000. Okay, if we go back 2 years ago, it was $100,000 less than that. It was only like $200,000 to win the Arnold. Yeah, remember, he put an extra $100,000 on it a couple of years ago, literally because they were having a problem getting enough competitors in it. This is a fact. Okay, I'm not making this up. Okay, they had to slap an extra $100,000 on it because they weren't getting the numbers or the interest in this is in the Arnold. Okay.
Yeah.
$200,000 for the Arnold. Now when he just said, they bumped it to 3. That's when Nick went in and, they got some names. Okay, great. Now he went to 5. So he's been playing catch up for years. Okay. Against the Olympia.
Yeah. Well, he announced over, he did the 500,000 and then Jake had to go and bump it to 6. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and that's cool.
Maybe we'd hear something about Arnold raising it even higher. Look, I think it's great for the athletes. That's where
absolutely.
That's where the competition is, I think.
Well, listen, it has. I mean, talk about.
Who would you say?
I talked about the prestige of the Arnold and how it's taken a hit over the year. Listen, the prize money again was less than half for just until 2 years ago. Okay, when they bumped it up.
The lineup is great, but Bob, the lineup is great at the Arnold now because they raised the prize money. So now you're getting Olympia lineups at the Arnold, which you weren't having before.
Correct, and keep it in mind. I know you guys brought this up the other day, and it's because it's true. He did give a Hummer. So, yes, the prize money was less, but he gave the Hummer and he gave the watch, which was worth 50 grand or something crazy.
Yeah.
So those accolades were in there too. But guess what? Over the years, the Hummer went away. The watch went away. The Terminator watch, I know they had a year or the ring or whatever it was.
Yeah.
All that stuff went away. And what was left was a $200,000 payday. And it started to have an impact that athletes, again, just the prestige of the Arnold wasn't enough. Everybody wants to know why the 212 isn't there. I submit a couple of years ago. I actually had a conversation with Bob Lorimer, who was in charge back then, and he was kind of giving me his take on they're not getting any interest. Just they're going to can it because they barely got enough interest. And I says, well, how much are you giving away in prize money? He says $5,000.
Well, yeah, that's
not true story, Dave. And I go, Bob, 5,000. So the guy who wins is going to lose money. And he goes, well, and this is a direct quote. I love Bob. I thought the prestige of just winning an Arnold would be enough. No, guess what? It's not. Maybe it was at one time, but that day has come and gone. So yes, I'm all for them increasing the prize money. It increases the Olympia and every other show around the world. Bader was increasing his double this year of what it was last year in Dubai. And so great for the athletes. Again, great for the overall sport, but let's not get confused. Again, there is no competition between the Arnold and the Olympia. It just does not exist.
It's not a competitive competition because the Olympia is the Super Bowl. It's a money thing. And I'm going to ask you, I'm going to put you on the spot. Who do you think will get to $1 million first? Do you think it'll be Arnold? Do you think it'll be the Olympia? Or do you think it'll be someone in the Middle East?
Well, you know what? I would go with either the Middle East or the Olympia. And if I was a betting man on Jake Wood, I would probably say the Olympia because one, they got deeper. Well, when I say deeper pockets, listen, Arnold could write a check right now for $1 million and he wouldn't, sneeze, right? So it's got to do with business. And this is where people are, why doesn't Arnold do this? Why doesn't the Olympia do that? There's an ends and a means to business. I mean, there is an ROI and there's a component to it. Yes, Arnold could just write a check, just as Jake Wood could write a check. He could make it $1 million tomorrow and without blinking an eye and probably just use it as a tax write-off. But in business, it does have to have a return. You know this, Dave. You're a businessman and have been for many years. So, will we see that $1 million payday? Probably at some point. But keeping in mind also the overall, which can't be discounted. We've got we've got every category to pay in terms of the Olympia. The Arnold only had half. And again, overall purse, again, 2.1 million versus under $1 million. So, and you can't discount that because Samson, from what I understand, his payday wasn't half of 500,000. He didn't get a check for 250. He got a check for second place as it was to the old money. So, he got a check for like, 120 grand or something like that. Big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's true. I just find it interesting because I'm waiting for the day where we see them. I think if there is a competition, and I don't know if there really is, it's kind of maybe a virtual competition. Whoever gets to $1 million first will be the guy that everyone remembers. And so I'm for the athlete. I know you are too. So I'd love to see Nick Walker or Samson or Derek, take $1 million payday home because that's going to set these guys up for the future, if they're smart. And I think that was something that never occurred when we competed. You weren't really set up for the future. You were set up maybe to buy a house and maybe and get your kids in college, but you weren't set up to have a retirement fund essentially, and you can do that now without that.
And listen, that's great for everybody. Again, you're seeing the Pittsburgh Pro emerge now, $100,000 payday. Again, we got shows around the world, the Middle East. Again, Bader Bodai, he's put his money where his mouth is, and he's willing to put that up. Again, the Arnolds put it up, the Olympias put it up. So great. I hope it continues for the sake of the athletes because nobody ever got into this game for the money. That we can all agree on. But, as per the Arnold, Dave, I know you got some great questions on the. Well, I wasn't at the microphone.
So I want to let me put a clip up here. Bob, can you kill 4 minutes while I get the clip?
Yeah, sure, man. Go ahead. I'm used to 4 minutes of dead silence.
I was saying that's an inside joke. Hold on. All right.
I got you, bro.
No one got it. All right, here we go. Let's play this clip.
But it's all fun. The key thing is that we pack the house, that everyone has a good time. And the other thing that I liked about the competition was the way you moved forward. I mean, there was not one single second this was a lag time. Because I always, for years and years and years, I always was complaining the day after the competition. I said, if you edit this show down, you can edit it down to an hour and a half, 2 hours. Why are we sitting there for 3.5 hours? Because of stupid talking with the MC. I said, they make up dialogue. And then all of a sudden now we have an MC that doesn't do that. We go right into it. We see right away the most muscular man in the world on stage, and bang, we go into it, and we go through the whole thing. And then the guys get introduced. The guys, you know their name, you know their history, where they're coming from, end of story. I don't want to hear.
All right, so that obviously was a direct shot at you. I mean, I'll say it if you don't say it. It was definitely basically saying that you were, telling jokes or wasting time, and that's why the podcast took so long. Which I really can't support that. That's not the case. First of all, the show went faster this year because they had less categories. And
listen, Dave. Hang on,
Bob, unpack that for us because
let me dissect that. Let me tell you how stupid that is, especially coming from Arnold. First of all, it was completely unwarranted. He could have thanked David Bay for doing a very nice job. And listen, before anybody wants to make a conspiracy out of that, me and David are close friends.
He's a good guy. We love David.
I primarily got David started in this business. I've given David more MC jobs than I've given myself over the last 5 years, 10 years, because I don't do a lot of the smaller shows anymore. And David's, like I say, he's a very close friend of mine. So good for him, and he did a great job. That said, first of all, this was ill-placed. There was no reason to bring up anybody, including me. All right, number one. Number two, if you had such a problem with me and how I do things, why would you have me back 3 more years?
Yeah.
So number three, again, he's bitching about his own show being too long. And I'll assume he's talking about, let's just say the past 10 years, right? Whatever.
Right.
Well, listen, you're the one that had the painted girls on stage. You're the one that had all the categories back then. You're the one that had the strongman event on back then. You're the one that had the 2 guys painted in gold from Las Vegas balancing on top of each other's heads. Okay. And the halftime, you did all this. This is your show, Arnold. Okay. I'm going to put this out. It's your show. You're the promoter. You can do whatever you want. Why did you have all this stuff packed into there then to make it a 3.5 or 4 hour show? That's on you. That's not on the MC. And I wasn't even the MC back then. Right. And the funniest thing of the entire thing that he said was, the stupid MC, they talk too much, basically, is what he's saying. Whether he's talking about me or others as well, right? The problem the past year wasn't that I was talking too much or anything. It was that there was nothing but dead silence on the stage as per the directions and the script, if you want to call it one, of the producer of the show. That's it. So there was no I'm just out there randomly talking about the weather and
who produced
la-di-da. I mean,
who was producing the show? So
Brian Powers, you could consider him. He's the guy that runs everything pretty much. Okay, he was brought over from Comic-Con a few years back. From what I understand, did a great job. San Diego Comic-Con is huge. Everybody knows. And he was brought into the bodybuilding world. Now, listen, much like I couldn't go into Comic-Con and tell you what to do, to think you could come into the world of bodybuilding and tell me what to do or anybody else is ludicrous. When I've got my whole life experience into this game, including 20 years at the highest level at the Olympia and working with great, like people like Robin Chang and other great producers that we've had over the years. So he's the one that put together. I couldn't even get a meeting to get the production or the script or anything like that. I asked for months whether we could get together. I had some great ideas, or at least I thought they were great for production, different set designs, never got one meeting, never got really even an answer. Mm-hmm. I never even had a meeting when I got to Columbus. There was nothing that was put in place. At some point, I got this feeble script in front of me, and I'm looking, and listen, everything's pretty much regular. You start the show, that this guy comes out, Jim Mannion comes out, Arnold comes out and says something, national anthem, whatever, all that pre-stuff that we do. Then I come out, get the show going, ask everybody if they're ready, Dave, and then we go with the show. Okay, all that's pretty clear cut, pretty basic, nothing crazy. Now I get to, we get to the first segment of whoever's out there. Let's just say it was Bikini Girls. I finish, and then it says in the script, go to commercial. Now, the commercials, everybody who was there knows, they don't show for whatever reason, okay? They don't show it on the screen if you're there live. It only gets shown for the pay-per-view audience. I said, okay, no problem. How long is that? That's a minute. Okay, listen, not a problem. A lot of people don't know this, Dave. You may not even be aware of this, but there are 6 commercial spots during any Olympia in the past 20 years that I can think of. There's 6 commercial spots that I have to fill in for throughout the night.
Let me stop you for 1 second. I remember in the past, they used to show the commercials up on the big screen. Why don't they do that anymore? I mean, wouldn't that make sense to give you a break, you can go back and get a drink of water?
It makes sense to me, but for whatever reason, again, it's not my call, okay, but they don't show the commercial there. Okay, listen, like I said, there's 6 commercial spots during the Olympia that I cover for that nobody even knows, because I'll just delve into something. Okay, we just saw our top 10 bikini girls. We'll see the ladies back in a little bit. But you know what, folks? I can't help but think back to 1980 when there was Joe Weider that instituted the first ever Miss Olympia commentator. Blah, 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 blah. And in my ear, I'm getting, okay, I'm coming 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, right? Okay, so, and you know what, folks? Thank God for that, or we wouldn't have these ladies on here today. All right, we're ready with our top 10. That's what you hear there, right, during that 1 minute. Now, I say, coming back to the Arnold, right? Okay, we're going to go to commercial. Okay, do you want me to, I fill for that, right? No. You're not going to fill for that. Are we showing it on the screen? No. Okay, what do we do then? All right, then you're coming back to me. No, we're actually going to go from the commercial straight to the commentators backstage, who was Fuad and Phil and I don't know, whoever else a couple of years ago. I said, wait a minute. Well, how long are we going to them for? 2-3 minutes? Are we showing that on the screen? No. So wait a minute. I've been doing this for a few minutes. So you want to go to a 1 minute commercial followed by 2 to 3 minutes of commentary, and then you're going to go back to me. Yes. So what am I doing for 4 minutes? Nothing. Nothing. You have a live audience. You have 2,000 people sitting out there watching a dead state. It's called going dark, if anybody knows the industry link. Yeah. So you want to just go dark for 4? You know how long 4 minutes is on a live stage?
No, it's a long time, yeah.
Hey, filling in for 30 seconds or a minute is hard enough. 4 minutes?
Yeah.
So I go, well, it's not going to work. Like, like that seriously? Like, can't we show the thing? No, we can't show the, we can't go to that. We can't show this. So you just want me to do nothing? Yes. This was put in place by Brian Powers and his Emmy Award-winning, and I saw he put his little statement out there, Emmy Award-winning world-class production team. This is what they came up with. Now, as you can imagine, this is exactly what happened. We went to it. I actually took it upon myself to explain that we were going to be going dark. So I just didn't finish my sentence and stand there like an idiot for 4 minutes thinking that I blew a fuse or something, right? By the way, during this time, there's no music, nothing going on, nothing on the stage. The stage just goes dark, with the exception of the light on me. For some reason, they keep that on, which was stupid. But again, just production errors, right? Now, Arnold's sitting down in the front row, bro, right where you've seen him for all these years. And I'm looking at him. And I can almost read his lips. I mean, I'm not that far from him. And he's going, what's going on? Why is there nothing going on stage?
Arnold didn't know what was going on, is what you're saying.
No, he's watching the show, and I can read his lips. What is going on? Right. Why is there nothing going on?
Right.
And I see his assistant Daniel kind of peel off, and then I see Brian Powers come out, and he ducks down and talking to Arnold, and then he comes over to me, and I'll leave out exactly what words he tells me, but he basically he told, hey, cut the shtick. I go, what shtick? I go, you're the one that, and that's some other profound words of wisdom, which I shot back. Tell him to basically, how do we put this, Dave? Maybe you should go make love to yourself, as words of that effect. And I says, this is your production. You planned for this. I told you it wouldn't work. And I said, so what do you want me to do? And he says, don't do anything. You got it. So this was the plan from the brain trust at the Arnold and the production. Listen, it was no better. I don't have to, fill this up with boring detail for everybody. It was just as bad in the UK 2 weeks later, which I was already contracted to do. They had no expediter. They introduced some guy to me in the UK that's never expedited the show as the head expediter.
Wow. So
you can only imagine how that, I had to actually recruit a guy that I knew out there to actually help out in the back, or it would have been a complete train wreck. But it was at that point that I found Brian, because I never had one word with him after that exchange. Finished the show. Everything was fine. Everything was cool. And at the athletes meeting of the UK show, I went right up to Brian, who was sitting up in the front, pulled up a chair right next to him, and told him this was unacceptable. It was not only rude, but I mean, it was like, why would you? I tried to help you out, and you guys still blew it because you didn't want it, because you think you know everything. And I told him at that point, I says, you need to find somebody else, because I'm not lending my name to such a disaster of a show. I don't care if it's the Arnold or anything else. I've done local shows that were produced better. So that's when I exited out, and I says, I wish you the best. End of story. So nobody was fired. Nobody was anything. I just told them I wouldn't be back, and I never heard anything back from them either. So cool.
Interesting. Yeah. It sounds like that seems to be an issue with the pay-per-view live stream. Well, actually, Arnold doesn't pay for it. They give it away for free, but the live stream versus the live audience, I think there has to be some kind of connection. Well,
first, Dave, like to your point, show the damn commercial, number one.
Okay, they used to do it back when Weeder was producing the show. I remember. I used to see all the commercials.
Why wouldn't you give more bang for your buck to the people that are paying you the money? Number two, I know they had the capability of showing the backstage, because when I went there about an hour early from when we were starting, it was on the screen.
Right.
The guys in the back doing the commentary, doing pregame or whatever they were doing, were literally on the big screen. And I go, oh, so you can show that there. Why don't we just do that? And of course, the director at the time, this guy, Tony, was a nice guy, but he didn't know what he was doing. They've had a different production crew in there every year that I've been there. So nobody knows, up from down of what they're doing. And then they would continuously change the script all the time, which again, Brian likes to come back at me, well, you weren't following the script. I said, was you following the script when I called Jim Mannion out and you walked out on the stage? Were you following the script when you just came out unannounced for no good reason during the thing?
Let me ask you a question.
Well, hang on. I'll give you the coup de grace. Were you following the script, Brian, when you decided to walk out and introduce the guy? I was supposed to introduce the sponsor of the Lifetime Achievement Award. So who was that? The guy who's got the ashwagandha company from India. Nice guy.
Yeah, nice guy.
Brian come out and said, no, I got this. So he takes the microphone. He introduces the guy. He comes out to the middle of the stage. Arnold obviously didn't know what was going on. He comes out to the podium. Brian's in the middle of the stage with this guy. He takes the award from him and leaves him standing in the middle of the stage and walks over to the podium where Arnold is. And the poor guy's just standing like an idiot. Was that in the script? Jeez, I don't remember that being in the script either. So it's no, it was a big train wreck, man. So
it seems to me, as an outsider, because I don't have any horse in this race, that your celebrity nature, because you do have a celebrity nature. Look, you've been doing the Olympia, you've been emceeing, you do a great job. I always commend you. No matter how we're fighting or arguing, I always commend you because you do a great job on the
appreciate that.
And it seems like there was a clash of egos here. Like, in other words, like, maybe you were bigger than the Arnold and the production crew, and it looked like there was like an ego fight here, and that maybe you couldn't take the instruction, or you couldn't at least do what they wanted them to do, and you had a better idea, and so therefore you guys clashed and it didn't work. Is that?
I think honestly, Dave, I don't disagree with what you're saying, but yes, I think there was. I think they still look at me as the Olympia guy, and if that has escalated over the last couple of years, I think that doesn't help. They still see me as the. I know I caught some grief, believe it or not. I actually caught some grief last year because I was mentioning the Olympia too much. Now this is a direct quote right now. So, and if you notice this year, there was a couple of instances. I got to call it the way it is. When they announced Brandon Curry for coming out, they announced him as 2-time Arnold Classic champion. This is again, anybody can go watch the tape. Okay, I don't know the guy who won the Mr. Olympia. He's the. You got to keep announcing, or if somebody, was Olympia champ or they took third in the Olympic. Well, of course I'm going to announce that. Why wouldn't I announce that? When the whole very essence of why anybody's even in this show is to get to the Olympia. But they don't like that. They don't. And if you go back and you watch, David mentions it a few times in there, but if you, like the Brandon Curry, some people aren't even mentioned as Olympia champions. And it's like, come on, that's as petty and as unprofessional as it gets. There's no reason for that. And you are a qualifier for the Olympics, no matter how you dice it. That's nothing to be ashamed of. You're the biggest damn show we got, and it's Arnold, for God's sakes. Right.
So I think it's kind of petty. I'm a little rubbed the wrong way with the pettiness that's going on between the Olympia and the Arnold. I don't know. It seems it's unwarranted.
Like I said, it's all on their end.
Yeah, I like the prize money battle because I think that's good for the athletes, but I don't like the pettiness. The pettiness is unnecessary, I think.
Well, this is truly apples and oranges. This is not Coke and Pepsi, okay? People, they're not competing to see who's the best. Arnold's got their thing and their shtick, and they've got a great expo, which has been much bigger than the Olympias traditionally over the years. And you got Arnold. Arnold's Arnold, right? Right. And then you got the Olympia. Joe Weider, 1965, the history, the Super Bowl of They're two different things. We don't have to fight. There is no competition, right? And again, you go to your show to get to our show. Yeah. So again, it's not a knock or to belittle you. It's just that's the way it is.
I love going to both shows. There's a different chemistry and a different feel to both shows. I'm treated very well at both shows. I like both production teams. I like the fact that there's an internal battle, kind of the way Muscular Development and Flex Magazine were battling back in the day, because it raises the level of everyone. But sometimes the pettiness I think we can get rid of some of the pettiness. If they don't want to use you, that's fine. I think you're, at this point in time, you're the kind of the MC everyone expects to see, the Michael Buffer out there. But, that's fine. I don't think they can pick whoever they want. I think that the pettiness is a little silly because it's unnecessary.
Well, come on. They were flying banners over the Olympia last year in Vegas of the Arnold. Yeah, that's how petty they are. They had those trucks they rent with the signs on them.
I took a picture of it, actually. I saw it, yeah.
Now, first of all, I don't know what that costs, right? Let's just say it's $20,000, okay?
Right.
It's you just took $20,000 and flushed it down the toilet, because other than yourself who happened to be out there to see it, nobody's out on the Vegas Strip going, hey, what's this Arnold show? And talk about petty. It's like, what do you think that they gain for you by spending any amount of money? They have a plane flying by with Arnold Classic, when you're talking about a show that's not even coming for 6 months. That is the very definition of petty, useless, and why you engage. What fight do you think you're engaging in here? Yeah. So,
like I said, clashing is good for business. It's good for the athletes. I'm sorry you had to go through that, and hopefully, moving forward, everyone can be friends again. But I do appreciate you coming on the show and giving your opinion, because like I said, I support that 100%. And I think we made some valid points, and hopefully the audience out there understands that as commentators, as analysts, this is what we do. We give our opinion. You might not agree with it. You might hate it. You might love it, but you've got to respect our right to say it. And I'll defend your right to say it. I'll defend my right to say it, and all the other analysts out there, even if I don't agree. And thanks once again for taking time.
Hang on. You can't dismiss me yet, Dave, because we have to address the athlete's rep.
Oh, yeah, right. I forgot about that. Okay. All right. Bob, let me say my piece, and I'll let you say a piece.
Shoot, brother.
Bob was 100% the athlete's rep for I don't know how many years it was. And
I do appreciate that, by the way. Thank you.
You did do a good job. You did do a good job when you athlete's rep. And then at some point, the athlete's rep no longer became relevant. I don't know when or why or how or whatever the case. And I do know that at one point you were actually trying to organize a union, which I thought was great too, but no one supported you. So
that was the origin of it.
Yeah. Kudos for you for that. But at some point, there was no athlete's rep anymore. And it was kind of like people just, called you the athlete's rep because you were the last athlete's rep there was. And I said, it was actually an argument we had, but it was actually me defending him. I'm like, listen, Bob's not the athlete's rep anymore. He was the athlete's rep, but he's not the athlete's rep. So you can't really hold him accountable in a positive or negative way because he's not the athlete's rep. And then you just recently came out and said, listen, I'm ceremonially the athlete's rep, not the athlete's rep. So is it accurate to say that?
Yeah, honorary is the actual word I use. So I'm going to really skip through this because, again, it's been so played out. But yes, I did try to organize a union back in 2001 or 2, somewhere around there. Yeah. Unfortunately, it did not get a lot of play. There was a handful of guys that were interested. So it didn't get anywhere. And that's okay. Listen, had there been a union then, they'd be in a much better position now.
Oh,
but that's,
my God, for sure.
Right? But that's here nor there. Okay. It was through that we actually got the athlete's rep position because I said, listen, we still need a voice, okay? Even if we're not going to do this union type thing, association, whatever you want to call it, the athletes should have a say in their own well-being and their own future.
You're right.
Wayne at the time, who was president, actually agreed. And he says, if you guys want a rep, elect a rep. So he made us jump through hoops. But instead of me, it was Sean Ray who did it because I was still competing at the time, and Sean was retiring. He was getting out. And he was always very active and vocal, as you know, and the athletes and getting more money and all that jazz. Okay. So long story short, he goes out, gets these votes that Wayne said he needed to get, 100 and some odd votes, whatever. Great. He's the athlete's rep. That lasts about 10 minutes because Sean didn't feel like he was getting the respect he deserved. He didn't feel like it was, getting anywhere really, with a meeting or two that he attended. And he was clashing heads with them. I know that's hard to believe. But So Sean said, all right, I'm out of here. I'm done. So this obviously left a vacancy. Now, being that I'm the one who started the entire thing, Jim Mannion came to me and he says, what do you want to do? And I says, well, somebody's got to be the rep. I mean, listen, even though I'm competing, it's probably not that much of a conflict. I would like to do it. He says, no problem. So they posted it up like a job application thing at work online somewhere. And, there was no other applicants. Let's face it, nobody else was really interested in the job back then. Yeah. So he appointed me as the official athlete's rep. Right. Which was all over all the magazines, Flex Magazine, NBC News. It was in everything. Okay. So it wasn't like it was a question. That's for all these people that calling me the self-appointed rep. I mean,
no, he was the rep. You were the rep. You were definitely the rep at one point.
Well, I mean, it's so funny when it's like, do you think I just showed up at a meeting and plunked my ass down next to Jim Mannion and said, hey, what's up? And he go, hey, Chick, what are you doing? I'm going to be the athlete's rep. He said, oh, okay. Hey, can I get you something to drink or eat or anything? Or, I mean, that's cool, right? Oh, here, you got any proposals? I mean, bro, listen, people, we've got 10 years of official minutes that Rob Wilkins has, which I'm actually going to get my hands on just for posterity.
Yeah, you should.
Because we used to actually do, and Dave, you remember this, we actually used to do the official meetings at the Olympia every year.
Right.
Judges meeting, and then we would have an IFBB Pro League meeting. Right. They would do the minutes, they would do the roll call, they would do the last year's business, old business, new business, and proposals. So I put in proposals for years, things like the 212 division, the bikini division, women's physique division. Those are all mine that I put in there. So for those saying, well, what did Bob ever do? Listen, I did a lot of things. Okay. I can't even remember half the stuff we got passed, but again, here nor there.
Just to qualify, you didn't create the divisions. You put in the request for the divisions and then they approved it or disapproved.
Well, yeah, I put in the idea. So I would put up a proposal that we adopted. Actually, it was a 210 back then, but a 210 division for those athletes that would qualify. They have to be 210 or under, and then all the criteria.
Right.
I would present that to the Pro League, and then we would vote on it. And they would say, okay, all in favor, aye, passed. I did the same thing with bikini. I did the same thing with the women's physique. I actually wrote the criteria for women's physique. So when you go read the rules, I wrote that. Right. But anyway, I don't want to get caught up on what I didn't do. I did plenty of people, okay? So that's not the issue. So about 8-9 years ago, could be more or less, but we stopped doing the official meetings because they changed the business dynamic of the IFBB, as you'll recall also.
Mhm.
So we weren't under the 503, blah, 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 and all that stuff. So they went to a different business model, LLC, incorporated, whatever they did, which doesn't require that you do those meetings. And,
Right.
and Jim, quite frankly, said, because I would come up with stuff throughout the year. And I'm like, why do we have to wait until the Olympia to do this? And he's like, you're right. We can just do this anytime, really. So we got rid of the official meetings.
Mhm.
In my eyes, that made, all right, so there is no really official position anymore. We don't do official meetings.
But Bob,
Now,
do you think there should be an elected athletes rep?
I mean,
It would seem like it would be logical to have one, right?
it would, but it's here's the problem, okay? We're not a union, okay? Again, I tried that stuff. It wasn't going to happen, all right?
No, I know, not a union, but still, there needs to be someone who advocates for what the athletes want, don't you think?
Well, I continued to advocate for the better part of 10 years in what I consider an unofficial position, because again, we didn't have official
that's your
meetings.
personal opinion, which is usually pretty accurate, but it's
Right.
still your personal opinion. No one is voting and saying, well, this is what we want, Bob.
Well,
Go ask for more money.
keep in mind,
the
IFBB has never made any conversation on it. There's never been any official thing. There is no Bob's not the rep. There is no official position. It just was status quo for the last 10 years,
Right.
like you
No,
said.
I know, but I'm saying I think there should be an athletes rep. I think that it was a good idea, and you actually
I'm all for it.
You did some
I'm all
great
for
stuff when you were the athletes rep.
I'm all for somebody else at this point doing it, because
Well, I mean, you can
frankly,
do it
Dave,
if people elect you, but I'm just saying if I think there should be an athletes rep who reps the athletes, and so if they don't like something about a show or the way things are being done, someone can advocate for them.
Sure. Listen, again, I did it for years, even in what I considered an unofficial position, because again, the IFBB never said a word. Not that I am, not that I'm not. I just continued in my same role. And quite frankly, I'm the only one that has done anything over 20 years of any significant nature for these athletes. And that goes from just recently, I was looking into some of the athletes getting their paychecks from some of the major shows. Again, I've written, letters to countries, saying that, this guy is an IFBB pro in good standing, blah, blah, blah. There's a ton of things that I have done in just my own personal capacity of being this, again, what I call honorary athletes rep. So that's where, people are like, well, I don't understand. And, I don't get it. And it's like, I can't explain it any easier than that.
The reason I'm saying it's honorary is because it doesn't preclude you from being able to critique the athletes, is all I'm saying. So
nor should it. Because
advocate for the athletes doesn't mean you can't say, I don't like the way Nick Walker looks on stage. I mean, they're mutually exclusive,
You're exactly right, Dave. Because and I've tried to explain this, look, even as in my full capacity as the official athletes rep, I don't represent the athletes individually. I'm not their manager. I'm not their liaison. I'm not a union steward. Okay. Right. I would work in the capacity and a general nature of the betterment of all. Half the stuff I proposed didn't even have anything to do with the men or the women. It was like in a general sense, like, just to give you for instance, like years and years ago when I was with bodybuilding.com, you'll remember, we used to do the beach shows, the ones on Venice Beach. Those are not technically non-sanctioned. They're not IFBB. They're not NPC. That's just an independent show that they do that bodybuilding.com would promote. We would have a tent out there, Russ, all the DeLucas, all that. Sure. I actually had to get the rule changed because according to the rules, you could get suspended and or fined if you did a non-sanctioned, non-approved event. I had to go to the IFBB, put a proposal in and say, you can't do that. Okay. I have an obligation to my company that they're having a business there. Listen, I'm not on stage. I'm not handing out trophies. I'm not championing some other federation, some alphabet soup federation. And I got it passed. I got it passed from the pro league to say, yes, they cannot stop you from doing anything other than competing. I put that proposal in. Yeah. And that even went to guest posing and stuff. Technically speaking, you could go do that if you wanted to do it, because again, you're not part of some other federation, but you can't preclude me from making my money, in my chosen profession. But just to give you an example, so this is the way it kind of went until recently. Then it's like, well, this is a conflict of it. It's all right. You know what? Listen, I've done this for 20 years. Okay. Somebody else can have at it if they want to do it.
Yeah, it would be a conflict of interest if you were the athletes rep on paper. That's why I'm saying I think there should be a real elected athletes rep, and then you could give feedback to the athletes rep as a guy who has good insight into the industry. Hey, this is what I think you should do or not do. And then they can take that into advisement. But I think there should be an athletes rep who advocates for the athletes, who doesn't critique the athletes. Probably someone who competes would be a good person. And then,
listen, that's fine.
Guys like you and me can give feedback to the athletes rep, but they would be unbiased and they would be just advocating for the athletes. And I think that there should be an elected person.
Well, one, I say have at it, anybody. If you want to write into the pro league and see if they'll make you the athletes rep, God bless you. And two, guess what, everybody? I got nothing holding me back now. So you thought I had an opinion before. Now I really don't have any reason to. And Dave, you and I have talked plenty of times off the record or off the air that the stuff I put out is mild by comparison to any real shop talk that we talk about.
I tell people the pre-show is way better than the real show that we do. So,
oh my God, we'd both be canceled for life. But anyway, I hope that clears up any communication or any just gray area that anybody would have. Well, you said you were the rep, now you're not the rep. It's like, which one is it? It's like, listen, it's you used to drive a Chevy, now you drive a Ford. I mean, so yeah, you don't drive the Chevy anymore. This is just logic, okay? It's not hard. It was an official capacity, then it was in an unofficial capacity. I don't know, we just didn't have official meetings and stuff, but everybody considered me the rep. I'll give you another good example. We were well past the official quote meetings and all that stuff when we had the split with Raphael and the IFBB Europe, we'll call it, right? I was called on as the official athletes rep to go to Pittsburgh. And if anybody wants to look it up, there's a video with me and Jim, okay, where I go to Pittsburgh, we sit down, we kind of go a little Q&A of what's going on with the whole thing. I was in the capacity of the athletes rep. It wasn't a quote. We weren't having meetings and stuff back then. I was called on by athletes. I was called on by, promoters. I've made changes still in the last 10 years. The current scoring system.
You went there because you wanted to help Jim and you wanted to clarify what was going on. I mean, because people were very confused by what.
But again, this wasn't an official. Well, again, we don't have official meetings, so take your pick.
No, but you went there as a favor,
Of course, but I went there as the quote athletes rep, which again, nobody's ever told me I'm not, right? Yeah. And even up until recently, the scoring system we use is from a guy I brought in and helped him, create the program of the current scoring system we use today. That's from my efforts of bringing him in, introducing him to Tyler, and they liked what he had. They liked the program. That's the current system.
The computer program that tabulates. Okay, I got you.
Yeah, that's again that origin is from me. Now again,
the scoring is still the same. It's now computerized. That's all.
It's way better, way cleaner. Just less issues and as an MC, as any MC will tell you, it's a lot easier to read because I'd have 12 different programs from people that you go that it's like, well, this is okay. If this is shaded, that means they did pose. You
don't want to read the wrong names. That's the worst of worst that you can possibly do.
Trust me, I had my Steve Harvey moment at the Olympia a couple of years ago. So, when they actually gave me the wrong winner, and it's like, oh Jesus, it's like
that's not fun. That's not fun. And you know what happened to Wayne D'Amelio when at the 97 Olympia when Paul Dillette almost killed him on the Queen Elizabeth or whatever that boat because they messed up the placings and he lost like 20-30 grand or something like that.
Well, everybody thought it was a conspiracy. It's like, look, people, sometimes it's just a clerical mistake. I mean, somebody added it up wrong. It doesn't mean and I've said for years, Dave, I mean, it's like if you think some of the moves that they've made over the years were political, I'm here to tell you that then these are the biggest bunch of idiots that I've ever met. Why would you have a guy win 8 times in a row? Right? Why? Listen, the smartest thing to do for business, if you want to go with
have the guy lose. Yeah.
Would have been back in 2001 when Jay arguably could have beaten Ronnie. Yeah, listen, I had Jay beating Ronnie. Okay, let's just go with that. You don't think it would have been good for business to have Jay beat the champ and then come back for the rubber match in 2002?
No, it would have been great.
Again, I give 100 scenarios of this guy or Victor or that guy or whatever.
Yeah.
No, that would have been the political play. a guy winning 7 times in a row, 8 times in a row is not good for business.
No, it's not fun. It's not fun after a while.
So if somebody is doing this stuff on purpose, I'd submit to you, like I say, they're not very smart and don't know really what's good for business. So,
well,
stop with all the conspiracy stuff, people. Okay, this just doesn't make any sense.
Keep giving your opinion, whether I agree with it or not. I support your right to do it. And thanks for joining us. And we're going to wrap up today's show. Of course, I'm Dave Palumbo with the Voice of Bodybuilding, Bob Cicherillo. We'll see you next time.